I'm Owen Casey Stevens, and this is a story how I learned about critical hits and critical fumbles throwing papers. When my wife LJ and I were significantly younger, we had a paper route, which was around 200 papers a night that we would pick up from the distributor, fold, put in a giant bag, and then we would drive to the neighborhoods where we threw them. My wife would drive a car that had all the papers in them. She would drop me off at the beginning of an area. I would throw all the papers on that block. She'd pick me up and we'd drive to the next block. And we had this for about 6 months. So if you're doing 200 papers a night for 6 months, that's around 36,000 newspapers that you're throwing, which means if there's only a 1 in 10,000 chance something will happen, it'll happen 3.5 times during that period of time. Now, mostly the things that went right or went wrong were incredibly minor things, and really we didn't even notice them at the time. There are 2 occasions where something went either spectacularly well or spectacularly badly in a way that I just would not have believed if I had not been there personally. I'll start with spectacularly well, although bizarrely it went spectacularly well in a way that was not at all helpful to me. One of the places where we threw papers, actually a lot of the places where we threw papers were apartment complexes, and a lot of them had second-story apartments, which would have railings. And at one point, while throwing a newspaper, which was wrapped in plastic, and it was the Sunday papers, it was a big thick thing, up on the second floor, it went spinning end over end and landed perfectly upright on the railing. Perfectly upright. I wasn't trying to do that. I absolutely do not have the skill to do that if I'm trying to. I just underthrew it by exactly enough for it to stand there like a candle in the wind. And that was actually the problem. That's why it was not particularly helpful. Oklahoma is windy when the wind comes sweeping down the plain. That's where we lived when we were doing this. And I realized that if I left it up there, there was a 50-50 chance that it was going to get blown off and fall to the ground. And then I would get a call around 8 o'clock in the morning saying someone was complaining they didn't get their paper. So even though I had successfully delivered it in just about the most awesome way I could imagine, I still had to go tromping up the stairs to knock it over onto the porch. So that was an example of a spectacular positive result that just isn't likely to happen. But again, you do something 36,000 times, you're going to see some outliers. The other event was the critical fumble, and it is the worst newspaper throwing event I have personally ever been part of. And in my opinion, that includes the time I had a newspaper go through a window, which is not that unusual, especially if you get tired towards the end of your throwing, you lose control. Anyway, this happened in winter, and there was snow, which isn't common in Oklahoma, but happens often enough that we're all familiar with it. Snow is quite deep. I was going through several little hills and valleys. We're throwing the paper at like 4 or 5 o'clock in the morning. And my wife, instead of driving to the end of the block, is pacing me because it's slick. And if I fall, she wants to know, and she's keeping track of me. So since she's slowly driving along, she is looking at the road, looking over to check on me, looking at the road, looking over to check on me, and roughly every glance over, I'm lobbing 1 newspaper as I trudge through the snow. And again, second floor apartment. So in this case, I've stopped, I set my feet, I'm just on the other side of a mound of snow on top of a small hill from LJ and the road. I throw the newspaper too hard and too high. It hits the eave, hits the wall, comes spinning back, and hits me right square between the eyes. And since I'm standing on ice, my feet go out from under me and I land flat on my back. So this is what it looked like from LJ's point of view. Here's the road, there's Owen in the snow. Here's the road, there's Owen in the snow. Here's the road, absolutely nothing. I had fallen so quickly and so flat in the snow that she couldn't see me at all. Meanwhile, I'm sitting on the ground and my glasses have built backwards at like a 90-degree angle. I can't see. I'm staring at the sky. I'm now getting snow in my eyes, which had not been a problem previously. And I'm genuinely thinking to myself, what just happened? And I'm playing in my head. I threw it. Okay. It hit the eave. All right. It hit the wall. Yeah. And then, oh, well, then the newspaper must be right. And about here, I hear my wife calling, Owen, are you okay? What happened? And I don't know, maybe she thinks I've been abducted by aliens. I'm not sure what she was thinking. So I sit up and she sees me and I'm waving to her and I'm looking around. I don't know if you ever thought about this. Newspapers are largely white. Snow is largely white. When you drop a bunch of newspapers in the snow and then you sit up and you sort of spread the snow, it can be difficult to find all the newspapers. So I'm sitting there gathering them up and I'm putting them in the bag. Now, neither of these was a spectacular or world-changing event, but they just both drove home for me that, yes, it is very unusual for something that is an outlier to occur, say, 1 out of every 20 rolls, such as with a d20, or even 1 every 216 rolls, such as with 3d6, or 1 in 100 rolls, such as with 2d10. But 1 in 36,000? Yeah, that'll happen.